Alright, so we're ready to move on to part 2. I've actually added just a couple more forms in here to resolve this a little bit further, mainly some of these bony landmarks that we saw in the original drawings, or original photos I should say. And with this form, again, the whole point is to have a template that we can work off of and trace off of, so that we can see the form easier than just looking at image planes. And I think that's readily apparent now. We can already have something that is a pre-visualization of a 3D character model. Well, to start off with this, I like to use the Create Polygon tool and the Edge Extrusion method to really build my form. Now remember, I've got everything referenced down here on a layer. And what I'm actually going to do is go into my side view. And in this side view, we're going to come in and try and trace off of the form that we see. Now, when doing this, sometimes it's easier to put this into the transparent sort of wireframe view. I know some people like working that way. I also know many individuals who like to work by going into the Hypershade and actually creating just a new dummy material for this as well, a new Lambert 2, which we can select and drag on top of. I'll assign this Lambert 2 to my material after I've created it in the Hypershade. And this is all optional, but it can be done to maybe give a little bit of color to this template form so that it appears a little bit different than your model. So this will allow it to just visually appear different when you're looking at it, and maybe for tracing off of. So I'm going to take those steps just so it's a little bit more present in the video what I'm actually looking at. And I'm going to go again to the side view and return to my either polygon shelf, or if you have your own shelf you can work with that as well. But for the purpose of this demo, I'm going to work with the polygon shelf. And I'm going to go to Mesh and choose the Create Polygon tool. This tool says click to place each vertex. To finish, press Enter. Well, what I'm going to do is start just underneath the neck, right around the collarbone, and just start drawing outside of the silhouette. Now remember, across the breast, I want to make sure that I'm not tracing the silhouette of the bust line, that I'm actually going between, and we're going to build that side form out later. And now I'm just drawing down across the body. Again, we're not going to trace down the legs. We're going to try and go between the legs. So it might be easiest to trace into X-ray view for this by going to Shading and choosing X-ray. And I will continue to trace around my form. If your vertices don't match up from the front to the back, that's okay in a position like this. We'll fix it as we go. And then we'll continue to wrap around the body. And we'll go a little bit up onto the neck. And one more, and I think that should have it. Now it's hard to actually see what we've done here when we hit Enter. But if you notice the form that we have, and you can actually see here I've traced too far outside of this piece. If you notice the form that we have, it's one sort of sliced silhouette straight through the model that we're actually making from the image planes and from the form, from these NURBS spheres. But what I like to do, my very first step, is I like to right-click on this new traced outline and choose Edge from the marking menu. I'll then grab a selection over all of the edges, and I'll hit Extrude the selected component. I'll hit W for the Move tool, and I'm going to move this out ever so slightly to the side, creating a new loop of faces wrapping around the model. I'll right-click on Face to re-enter the Face component mode, and just get rid of any unnecessary faces, like the two inside forms. Now I can come in, and if some things are out of alignment, I can very easily just push these back until they work. So I can do them one at a time, just returning them to being right on that silhouette. Now, when doing this, you want to be very careful that you're not taking anything off of the center line. That's going to be crucially important when doing this. You don't want to be able to pull your forms to the side, as you see I just did. So make sure you're just on the center line, and that's going to make sure everything stays in place. So I'm just pulling on the arrows themselves, as you see here. I'm not using the free manipulator in the center by adjusting the square. And I'm just going to try and trace my outline to the body. And this is why the task becomes, I think, a lot easier once you've come in and put together a template to work off of. Because then you can just look at the 3D form and say, all right, is my polygon mesh inside or outside of the body? Where does it need to go? And as long as nothing is inside of your template, you've pretty much got everything built correctly. So we're almost built here and almost situated. And there we go. We're still working actually kind of high poly. We're going to shave off some of these polys by the time that we're done, because this might be a little bit more involved than we need. But I'm trying to just trace the contour first and then optimize a little bit later on. We'll position that one right there. To make sure I've got a working second half, I'm going to take my model, make sure that its pivot point is down at the origin, and go to Modify, and I can choose Freeze or Reset if it's not currently there. And if I want to make my duplicate, I'll just go to Duplicate Special, Options box, set my scale at -1 in the X, set my geometry type to Instance, and hit Duplicate Special. And now I'll have a second side. Well, again, I might want to keep this a little bit lower poly for now, so if you can find some edges that you think need to be removed, you can always come in, select a host of them, and we can then remove them pretty easily. Let's see here. That one looks good. Let's get rid of that one. Once I've got those selected, I will go to Edit Mesh, Delete Edge/Vertex, and that will cut them out. You can see there's a lot fewer faces here now. That might cause me to have to do some adjusting on this, but so be it. If I need to reposition these just a little bit to make sure that they work, that is totally fine. And again, the whole goal of this is to make sure you see a gray form outside of the blue in this case, that you see the template entirely covered eventually by the gray silhouette. So let's move these backward just a little bit, and these can come up so they average out correctly. And these can probably come up as well. I'll move these down. I'm trying to average out my faces a little bit so that they're not wildly rectangular. And there we go. That's my first silhouette, and we're going to build out the next one in just a second. So we'll save out the form, and we'll move on to the next video.